Amazing Grace by Right by Faith. Lightning danced through the sky in a show that could only be described as the most awesome and terrifying display of raw power that Jeremy had ever seen in his short life. The howling winds threatened to push over anything that wasn't deeply rooted into the ground. Without warning, a lightning bolt shot from the sky and into the ground only several body lengths away from the frightened child and the Pokemon in his arm. For Jeremy, it was a breaking point. In an act of desperation, the boy dropped to his knees and looked towards the sky. Tears streamed down his face, mixing with the ruthless rain that fell from the heavens. He was angry, confused, and scared. Why had this happened? How had he gotten himself into such a dire situation? Why him? He was only a child. He shouldn't have to go through this. I want to go home! Please, somebody help me! Jeremy cried to the sky, as though he were calling out to a deity of some sort. There were dozens of legends that circulated around the world about gods or godlike creatures that governed existence, beings who had pity on people such as him. Never before had Jeremy so wished for such a legend to be true. Seconds passed. The only sound that filled the air was the heavy rain that pummeled the delicate leaves of the forest trees. The young boy continued to cry as he felt his tiredness finally catching up to him. He was cold, shaking, and terrified. Was this the end? Would the chilled, rain-soaked ground of the forest be his grave? With both his physical state of deterioration and resolve all but shattered, Jeremy could only lower his head and close his eyes as he awaited the inevitable. Choked sobs escaped his throat as tears continued to stream down his face. The boy didn't want it to be like this. He wanted to see his family again. He just wanted to go home.
Come.
Jeremy let out a ragged breath as he heard the voice echo in the woods around him. The boy's head snapped up as he looked around, but nobody was to be found. Forcing himself off of his knees, Jeremy's gaze darted around the darkened forest with a panicked expression. Hello? Is somebody there? Please, help me! No response could be heard, only the rain. But he had heard a voice. He had not imagined it. That Jeremy knew for certain. Seconds passed. Then the voice repeated,
Come.
The voice, deep and powerful, cut through the air and seemed to demand Jeremy's attention. It was calm, comforting even, as it called out. Jeremy looked behind him. That was where the voice had come from. He was positive about that. Turning around with renewed strength, Jeremy took off running towards his possible rescuer with Ralts in tow. I'm coming! I'm coming! The voice kept repeating the same phrase.
Come.
Getting louder each time. The young boy was overjoyed. He was going to be saved. He wasn't going to die. Jeremy was near to his rescuer. He had to be. The voice sounded as though it was directly in front of him. Running as fast as his small legs would carry him, Jeremy halted as the voice suddenly stopped calling. In front of the young boy wasn't his rescuer, but something else entirely. A large, steep wall of stone emerged from the darkness in front of Jeremy. It wasn't a wall built by the hands of man, but through the will of nature. An enormous cliff face covered in moss towered in front of the boy. However, the cliff face wasn't what caught Jeremy's attention. Something else entirely was the focus of his gaze. A cave seemed to be carved into the face of the cliff, a shelter from the storm. It was a saving grace. Without a moment of hesitation, the boy ran through the opening in the side of the natural stone wall and let out a sigh of relief. The cave was fairly small, but had ample space to facilitate Jeremy's one and only need, shelter. The cold rain that had pummeled the child and the Pokemon he'd rescued still fell from the skies, but no longer did Jeremy have to worry about being at its mercy. The first thing Jeremy did when he got settled inside the cave was check on the condition of the Ralts he had saved. The boy's stomach sank when he realized the severity of its condition. The Pokemon was shaking uncontrollably and letting out barely audible whimpers of pain and discomfort. Jeremy gently brushed aside the Ralt's mint-green hair and found its eyes clamped shut. Its breathing was shallow as it struggled to inhale. Placing the back of his hand on the shivering Pokemon's forehead confirmed just how cold the little thing was. "We have to warm you up. You're going to freeze if we don't," Jeremy stated aloud. As expected, the Ralts showed no signs of hearing or understanding the young boy. Looking around, Jeremy saw the cave was completely barren and contained nothing that could help him, just dirt and stones. It was a stretch that there be something in the cave to begin with, but it was worth hoping. As Jeremy stood and debated what to do next, the Ralts let out a sneeze, causing the boy to jump in surprise. Cautiously leaning over the Pokemon, Jeremy cringed as the small creature let out yet another sneeze, indicating its illness and current physical state. Kneeling down on the dry cave floor, Jeremy hovered over the small creature, at a loss for what to do. Ralts was sick and cold, and if he didn't do something, it wouldn't make it through the night. As his mind tried to process the situation, a thought, an instinct, overcame him. In one quick movement, he pulled the Ralts into his embrace. The Pokemon tensed up for the briefest of moments before melting into the arms of the young boy. It was all he could do, the only thing he could think to warm up the creature. It had to work. "I'll warm you up so you'll get better," Jeremy whispered into the petite creature's ear as he shared his body heat. He could feel his heart beat against his chest as he pulled the pale Pokemon closer in an attempt to warm it up. "You'll get better, and you can keep living. That's a promise." A warm sensation came over Jeremy as he finished his sentence. The feeling seemed to be radiating from his very core, spreading through his body in a wondrous fashion. The boy had no idea where it had come from, but it felt good. No, saying it felt good was an understatement. It felt as though the emotions of happiness and joy had physically manifested themselves and wrapped him in a blanket of warmth and comfort. A feeling of peace overcame Jeremy as he leaned back against the cave wall and continued to hold the Ralts close to his chest. "Go to sleep, Ralts. We'll get out of this okay. I know it." The words were spoken not out of a false sense of hope, but out of certainty. In his heart, Jeremy knew what he said was true. He didn't know where the feeling had come from, but he decided to embrace it regardless. Outside, the rain continued to pour, and lightning continued to strike, causing deafening thunder to resonate through the air. But none of that mattered. Jeremy was safe inside the cave, and he protected the Ralts he'd saved. With the warm feeling still flowing through him, Jeremy lowered his head to rest it atop the Ralts' own, closed his eyes, and let sleep take him.